Hello, my name is Seth Witt, and for my project, I decided to choose the October Crisis of 1970. Sort of as a context to the time period leading up to this, they were coming out of the Quiet Revolution in Quebec. There was some unrest in the 1960s. There was a rise in Quebec nationalism. There was political, social, and cultural change going on at the time. The main group that drove this crisis was the Front de Libération du Québec, otherwise known as the FLQ, which was founded in 1963. They were a very violent group. They used violence to achieve their goals. They had a long string of attacks from 63 to 70, and from what I found in sources, it was 160 to around 200. They were influenced by anti-colonial and communist movements, particularly in Algeria and Cuba, with Castro and all of the Cuban Missile Crisis stuff going on in Cuba with America at the time. Like I said before, they used violence. They wanted to achieve independence for the Quebec, and they wanted a socialist Quebec. And by 1970, more than 20 FLQ members were in prison for these acts of violence. This image on the right is one of the bombings they did. Some of the other things they would do were just bombs in mailboxes and violence acts like that. So in response to this and the prisoners they had, on October 5th, 1970, they captured British Trade Commissioner James Cross, who is this image on the right. And in demand for his release, they wanted FLQ prisoners to be released, FLQ manifesto to be broadcasted and published, $500,000, and then a safe passage to Cuba or Algeria. Then after negotiations, and that did not happen right away, on October 10th in 1970, they kidnapped Quebec Minister of Labor Pierre Laporte, who is this image on the left. So how did the government respond to this? First, there was military help to protect high-profile people and locations, and they just wanted to maintain order. The image on the top right is the militarization that was going on. This is the military in the streets of Montreal, I believe it is. Then on October 15th, for negotiation purposes, the Quebec government announced it would release 5 FLQ prisoners on parole and guarantee passage out of Canada in exchange for the return of hostages. However, as a little bit of a spoiler, this did not happen. On October 16th, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau then invoked the use of the War Measures Act, which basically made FLQ membership a criminal act, according to the government, and they could take in anyone on suspicion that they wanted to without questioning and the right due process. This is sort of similar to how the Cold War was going on in America and people in suspicion of working with the Soviets were being taken. This image, the middle image on the right, is a person that was being detained unrightfully, and you can see the fist he's bumping in the air for his pride, sort of as a sense of he's being done wrong. The War Measures Act suspended civil liberties and personal freedoms of Canadian citizens, and the country did not like this. 397 civilians were arrested and detained without bail. There was a lot of questioning going on of if this was right to use this War Measures Act, and Trudeau used his famous phrase, quote unquote, "just watch me," when it came to justification of the War Measures Act, as he was determined to keep the country safe by whatever means. This image on the bottom right is the people of Canada saying they would send telegrams to Trudeau and that they do not support the FLQ, but they also do not support themselves losing their liberties. So these are just some of the reactions people had to this. Then on October 17th, tragedy struck as Pierre Laporte's body was found in the trunk of an abandoned car near the St. Hubert Airport. The FLQ announced Cross would be held until all their demands are met, and he would be executed if the quote-unquote fascist police attempted to intervene. The images is Cross's funeral and then the car he was found in. Or not Cross, Laporte's funeral. However, a resolution was soon met. On December 4th, Cross was released by the FQ after negotiations. The 5 known kidnappers, they were all granted safe passage to Cuba by the government of Canada after approval by Castro. However, they all eventually did return to Canada and did receive light sentencing. What I would say most of them was multiple years with parole. And then for the murder and kidnapping of Pierre Laporte, 4 people were charged. It was Paul and Jacques Rose, who are the top 2 in this image on the right. And then Francis Simrad and Bernard Lordy were also charged with kidnapping and murder, and who are the bottom 2 in the image. The outcome of this, there was a controversial reaction to the kidnappings and the use of the War Measures Act, and it led to, in 1988, the War Measures Act being replaced by the Emergencies Act, which limited the powers for government to deal with security emergency, basically added more layers for the government to intervene on things. And then also, instead of the violent Socialist Party of the FLQ, a new party called the Parti Québécois was formed for those seeking Quebec independence. Overall, just a new sense of national pride was formed for the country. These are the sources I used to make this project. Thank you.